Hey guys and gals, Team Player Gaming here, and today I got a special video for you guys. Today I want to talk about all the information that we got in Gen Con, for those of you that can't actually watch the streams. We got all kinds of stuff. Not only did we get a bunch of Guns and Gears information, we also got information about the new classes, the new playtest classes, and we got Book of the Dead stuff, Monsters of Myth stuff, all kinds of things. Let's just dive right into it. So first let's talk about what everybody wants to know about. The two new playtest classes. We didn't get too much information about this, but we do know what the two classes are now. We got the Psychic and we got the Thamateurge. So first let's talk about the Psychic. So according to the developers, the Psychic's powers can go off of either emotions or logic. So apparently, if you base your powers off of emotion, then you're charisma based. Which is interesting because I would have thought it would have gone off of wisdom at that point. In fact, that's what a lot of people in the stream thought. But no, apparently it goes off charisma. If your powers are more based on logic, then of course you're gonna go off intelligence. That just makes sense. I could totally see logic psychics being played as Vulcans from Star Trek. I think that could be really fun. Apparently psychics are spontaneous occult casters too. I could also see cathartic magic being combined with emotion psychics. Totally. Also, we found out that psychics are going to have a large focus on cantrips. I'm definitely glad to see another occult caster. I just wish it would prepared. The occult spell list is by far the best teamwork spell list. And I bet we'll get more occult cantrips and spells in Dark Archive, which is where both of the new classes are coming from. Honestly, I'm not too excited about the Psychic, and I'm not alone. Don't get me wrong, it's a good class. But the other class we got, the Thamateurge, sounds so much more fun from a teamwork standpoint. So, the Thamateurge is clearly based on the Occultist from Pathfinder 1. And a little bit on the Inquisitor, too. But this is a brand new class. And they're not a spellcaster, but they are magically themed. They're a martial class, but they're based off charisma, which is interesting. But what really excites me about the Thaumaturge is that they're based on recall knowledge. Apparently, they have access to all of the skills that are based off magic. So arcana, religion, nature, and occultism. Right now, it's unclear whether all thaumaturges get those skills or whether it's based on subclass. I tried to get an answer for that for you guys, but they didn't pick my questions, so we'll have to find out when it comes out on Monday. Also, they said that thaumaturges, in addition to getting the regular recall knowledge information, also get weaknesses of monsters, even if they fail on their recall knowledge, which is freaking epic. If any class will get people to actually start using recall knowledge, it's this one. Also, thaumaturges seem to get implements just like occultists did in Pathfinder 1. Unfortunately, we didn't get any of the abilities of these implements, but that's another thing we'll find out on Monday. Also, thaumaturges are not spellcasters, so they don't have a spell DC. However, apparently, they can cast some spells using their class DC. This is another ability that sounds just completely epic to me, and could be really good for teamwork. It just depends on what spells they can cast. Alright, that's pretty much all the information we got on the playtest classes. I assume we didn't get much information about them because it's just going to come out on Monday and we're going to get everything then. But anyway, I'm going to move on to Guns and Gears, and boy did we get a ton of information about that book. So the book seems to be divided into three different sections. We got the Gears section first, then the Guns sections, then kind of a Galarian lore about guns section. This isn't really a lore channel, so I'm not really going to cover anything about the lore section of this book. However, I will cover the Gears and Guns section, and we got a ton of information from both. So first up, I want to talk about the Gears section. We didn't really get a whole lot about the inventor, to be honest. They did change how the unstable trait works. So apparently there's now minor versions of the feats that have the unstable traits, so you can use them without messing up your invention. But then there's also the better versions that can mess up your invention. So they also told us that it's very long with a huge amount of abilities. We're getting archetypes in this book too. The Overwatch archetype sounds like it would be amazing with the Thamateurge. This archetype apparently is about watching over the battlefield and helping allies, which sounds amazing for teamwork. We're also getting the Sterling Dynamo archetype. That archetype uses technology from all over the world. Could be interesting for teamwork depending on what kind of technology you have access to. Also, my personal favorite from this book is definitely the Trapsmith archetype. So they build gear-based snares, which sounds epic with the Outwit Ranger. When this book comes out, I will definitely be doing a teamwork build video about a ranger that takes this archetype. That just sounds amazing for teamwork. So the final archetypes that were spoiled in Gen Con for this book are the Trick Driver and the Vehicle Mechanic. It sounds like these two are going to work together amazingly. Obviously, these two are based on the vehicles that are going to be in the book. The Trick Driver is going to have all kinds of crazy things to do with these vehicles. And of course, the Vehicle Mechanic is going to help him fix those. We're also getting brand new tech-based backgrounds from this book. They gave us 2 examples of this. So with the Saved by Clockwork background, you essentially have a clockwork-like heart or something. So you're better at crafting because you have to take care of this artificial organ. This background could definitely be interesting because, let's face it, crafting can save the party so much money if you use it right. The other example we got was the Wished Alive background, which is essentially your Pinocchio. Yeah, seriously, you're a construct that got wished alive. We will have to see what kind of skills this gives you, but overall, could be good for teamwork. And now we get into all the gear in the gears section. So the first thing they talked about was the combat gear. I think the example that they gave for the non-consumable was like a grappling gun, which could be rather interesting. And then we have the gadgets, which are consumable items that they said could pretty much do anything. And apparently, the inventor can get a bag of these once a day, which could be interesting. You never know what these things could do. They didn't really give us any examples of gadgets, but we'll see. Also in this book are the siege weapons. In the stream, they literally said twice that the siege weapon rules were the best they've ever seen. They didn't go into detail on that, but it sounds like you'll be able to use siege weapons in your games if you want to. Then of course we have techno, snares, and hazards, which I kind of talked about earlier. They also have utility gear in this book. I think the example they gave was like an electric eel aquarium that like lights up when you do certain things with the eels. And then we have all the mobility items, and I think the example they gave in the stream was like an armored mobile inn, which just sounds hilarious and could be like very useful for roleplay. In the gear section of this book, we also have clockwork tech, which is uncommon, steam-powered tech, and even Stasian tech, which is like Dr. Frankenstein type stuff. And that's everything in just the gear section of the book. And then of course we have the guns section of this book. The first thing they talked about in the stream was all the archetypes in this section. We didn't get too much information about what these archetypes can do, but we did get a lot of names. The first archetype they talked about was the artillerist, which apparently is going to use the siege weapon rules. I am definitely interested to see how this archetype works with the team. Then we have the sniping duo, which sounds pretty good for teamwork. From what they said, you designate one person to be your spotter, and then you have some shared abilities with them, without them even needing to take this archetype, so that's pretty cool. Then they talked about the spell shot, which seems to have a combination of feats in a special way for Gunslinger. I'm interested to see how that works. The last one that they gave us some information on, besides just the name, is the Unexpected Sharpshooter. They have a 12th level feat called Chain Reaction. The example that they gave in the stream was like, you shoot a water tower and the water comes out and hits a board, which sends a candle flying that lights a city on fire. Definitely could be some interesting things you could do with that. We didn't get any information about these, but we did get the names of the Beast Gunnist, the Bullet Dancer, the Demolitionist, the Pistol Phenom, and the Fireworks Technician. I could definitely see the Goblin taking that last one and just being hilarious. And then of course we got brand new information about the Gunslinger. Those of you that have played the playtest know that we've got 3 different subclasses for the Gunslinger. We had the sword and gun Gunslinger, we had the classic Western Gunslinger, and then we had the Sniper. But now we're getting brand new subclasses. The example they gave was the Vanguard Gunslinger, which is this tanky gunslinger with high strength. They said this one takes control of the battle and protects allies. I could definitely see this being combined with the champion archetype, or vice versa. We don't know much about this type of gunslinger yet, but it sounds like this could be a really good protector. They did, however, give us the greater deed of this type of gunslinger. It's called Siegebreaker. Essentially, you move up to your target, you hit them with the barrel of your gun, and then you shoot them. But then you become immobilized and gain a defensive bonus. I can just imagine this type of gunslinger using this, and then a spellcaster casting Mud Pit, because the gunslinger is immobilized anyway, and Mud Pit will make it very difficult for enemies to move past him. We also found out that yes, you will be able to use the gunslinger class with crossbows. So even if your GM doesn't allow guns in his game, you can still play a gunslinger. And now we need to talk about all the guns we're going to get in this section. What they've done is they divided all these different types of guns into sections. That way you can find the type of gun you're looking for rather easily if your GM only allows certain types of guns in their game. The first section they talked about is the classic guns like the Fire Lance and the Flintlock Musket. But in this section they also have more advanced racial guns like the Dwarven Scattergun and the Goblin Flintflesher. Then they talked about the Beast Guns, which are guns that are made from certain monsters that were killed in a ritualistic hunt. Some examples of these include the Drake Rifle, which is made from a drake and shoots out its breath weapon. And then we have the Spike Gun, which is made from a manicore tail and shoots out manicore tail spikes. Next is the Cobbled Weapons, which are weapons that weren't made very well. They're mostly goblin weapons, which makes sense. Apparently they also always have a misfire chance, but they do some cool stuff when they don't misfire. The next one they talked about is the combination weapons, which are a melee weapon and a gun at the same time. I'm so glad they finally gave us sword guns, because I've been wanting to build a boss that uses one of those for a long time. They also gave us 2 traits that these weapons can have. The combination trait just means it's a melee weapon and a gun at the same time, and you can switch between the two with an interact action. Then we have the critical fusion trait, which just sounds really cool. So when you're using a combination weapon in melee, and you crit, you can use the regular crit specialization effect, but you can also just shoot your gun as part of your crit. They did give us a couple of examples of these. The first example they gave us is the 3 Peach Tree, which is an elf weapon that's a trident with the middle prong replaced with a gun. And then it's also attached to a cord. I can see some cool things with using that. It did give us the Gunsword, like I said before. The only thing they told us about that was that it deals a D8 no matter how you strike with it. They also gave us the Kickback trait, which it sounds like shotguns will have that. Basically, you have to have enough strength to control it, or you gotta put it on a tripod. The other thing that they told us was that you could add things to your guns like scopes and firing mechanisms. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about for this section of the video is the automaton ancestry. Unlike the android, this seems to be a full-on construct. We got a little information about them. So their feats seem to have enhancements, which are just better versions of the feats, which apparently you get by taking other feats down the line. So that might be interesting. They also gave us a heritage and a few feats. The heritage they gave us was the Hunter automaton, which seems to be an automaton that can go down on all fours and move faster than other automatons. They also told us that all automatons have an energy core, so they gave us the feat Energy Beam, which just gives you a ranged unarmed attack. So of course you can combine it with hand wraps and mighty blows and everything you can do with that. So another automaton feat they gave us is the Arcane Safeguards feat, which just gives you a resist magic reaction, similar to what the Elfbane Hobgoblin Heritage gives you. And the last automaton feat they gave us is the Lesser Augmentation feat, which is one of those augmentation feats that can power up lower level feats. Overall, we'll have to see what other options the automaton has, but it doesn't sound like they're going to be very good for teamwork. Alright, that's most of the information we got from Gen Con, but I do want to talk about a few of the other books before I end this video. So after Guns and Gears, the Grand Bazaar book comes out. They told us about a couple things from that book. First of all, they gave us the Spell Trickster archetype, which sounds similar to the Arcane Trickster from Pathfinder 1e. So they give us a couple of examples of what this archetype could do. Apparently, this archetype can use Mirror Image to help allies flank, which sounds amazing. They also said that this archetype could use Mage Hand to pick locks and disable traps, similar to what the Arcane Trickster could do. I imagine this archetype is going to have some cool stuff with invisibility, so this sounds like it would be great for rogues. They also talked about some of the magical tattoos that are in this book. I think the example that they gave was one that gave you cold resistance. From that and the other arcane tattoos we've seen so far, I really don't think these are going to be teamwork options. Which totally makes sense. Then they talked about Lost Omens Absalom, which seems to be more of a GM book than a player book, but could be good for players. This book might show how NPCs work together, so it might give players some ideas, which I think is cool. The next book they talked about is Monsters of Myth. They didn't give us a whole lot of information about this book, but it sounds like some of these monsters might be ones that you have to work together in ways you wouldn't expect to beat. Also, apparently this book is going to have rules for creating your own versions of mythic monsters, which just sounds epic. If I'm creating my own mythic monster, I'm building it in a way that you have to work together with your team in an interesting way to beat. They also talked about the Tallyj monster, which seems to be this natural, true neutral monster. They said you really don't want to fight it, because if you can make friends with them, they might give you a mask, which apparently they have some interesting effects. We'll have to see what kind of things the masks can do, but this could be very interesting roleplay for druids. They also have the Crisis monster, which lives in a labyrinth and might be an interesting adventure. They talked a little bit about the Knights of Lastwall book. They only said a couple things about this book. Number one, there's going to be new Knights of Lastwall feats, so that should be interesting. They also said we were going to get some new information about squads in the Knights of Lastwall. Hopefully we'll get some teamwork feats based on those squads, but we'll see. Okay, so the last book that they covered that I want to talk about in this video is the Book of the Dead. So we already knew that we were going to be able to play as undead when this book comes out. But we found out in this stream that we're going to be able to play as ghouls and vampires, which is awesome. We also learned about the undead Eidolon for the summoner and the exorcist archetype. We didn't get much information about the undead Eidolon, but we did get some information about the exorcist archetype. So the exorcist archetype is apparently going to be able to use spirits to do certain effects. I forget what example they gave in the stream, but what would be really cool is if one of the spirits could frighten everybody in a 15-foot cone or something. That would fit this archetype so well and would be an excellent teamwork option. They also talked a little bit about the Necromancer archetype, but to be honest, I really don't see this being very good for teamwork. Overall, I think most of these books are going to have pretty good teamwork options. We didn't get much information about a lot of these books though, so we'll have to see. And that's going to wrap up this video. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more Pathfinder 2nd Edition teamwork content. You can also check out my Facebook and my Twitter page. But if you really want to support me, you can check out my Patreon page. Links are in the description. I will of course be covering the Playtest Thamateurge and Psychic when those come out. I'm honestly very excited to see what the Thamateurge can do. So until next time, remember, teamwork is vital.